Welcome to the show. No one has been more prolific when it comes to bringing about the history of Newark and its cultural jazz community than Barbara Kukla. Today she is our guest and we're very proud to have her. She has a new project out. The project is called The Encyclopedia of Newark Jazz, A Century of Great Music. And it is really dynamic in the way that it has been put together. Barbara, thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to talk with you again.
Well, thank you very much, Herb, for having me once again. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm delighted every time I'm with you. You know, you've been one of my honorees. And
thank you.
The reason why I did it was because you just give me inspiration. And, you know, I'm going to tell you, I was a fan of yours when you worked for the Star Ledger.
A fan?
I'm telling you,
Wow.
I only bought the paper when I knew that it was going to have your section
I
in
can't
it.
tell you how much that makes my day, how proud that makes me, because I put my heart and soul into my career at the Star Ledger and my career as an author.
And looking at it from that perspective, it takes a lot of work when you get into that involvement because of the fact that there are facts.
Yes.
You can't just be putting out information that
Sure.
people can't really adjust to, because then it really doesn't attract the believer.
Well, but I think with my writing, it's not just that I write it. Most writers write it and nobody ever gets to see them, or maybe at a book signing. I'm here in Newark. I'm here every single day. So if I write something about you, you know it and you see me, and I get the feedback, good or bad. Hopefully, mostly it was good, and because I know the people also, it's a matter of resources. I really don't think anybody else could do this without sounding braggadocious, because I know the families. If someone else were to write the book, for example, would they know where to find Sarah Vaughan's adopted sister or James Moody's wife? They're my friends. I just dial them. That's it. Yeah. So.
You've been supportive also in a number of different venues. I see you at my church, and
Yeah.
I see you over at the Priory, which is an area that we frequent a great deal. And now that I've even tried to jump into the jazz genre. But what's so important about the fact is that it's not always you're there trying to sell your volumes. What you're there doing is collecting a knowledge that many of
Sure.
us don't have an opportunity to share.
Well, I wrote another book called Newark Inside My Soul. Excuse me. And one of the things I think is interesting, that I've heard this very often. One of the people who live in Newark often say, do you live in Newark? And if you don't, that's supposed to be a negative. My question is, what do you do for Newark? A lot of the people that ask, do you live here, may live here, and hopefully they're doing something for Newark, but not always. So I think that the real measure is, what kind of contribution have you made? And I'm happy to say that I've been in the city and I'm here every single day. I belong to Bethany. I was at Bethany earlier today. I'm here this evening, always 2 or 3 times, even though I live on the outskirts. But I know nothing about the town where I live, very little. I know so much about Newark because I've been involved in the history more than 50 years now.
Thinking about it from that perspective and understanding you and who you are, what really charges you to focus on the genre of jazz?
Well, it always goes back to, if you show the cover, Miss Rhapsody, who was on the right in 1944. I was a young reporter at the Star Ledger, and I worked on Sundays. Dwight Johnson, who later became a photographer for Don King, was a young kid photographer at the time. This is in the late 60s. All we wanted to do on Sunday was to get out of the office. So every Sunday, we'd particularly like to find a story at the shore or some place where we go that was fun. And in those days, you could recommend a story. So Dwight and I, one night I saw Miss Rhapsody on TV. She was actually doing days work, but a young man from Brooklyn was trying to revive her career at the time. As soon as I heard Newark, I went to Carl Jones at the Bridge Club and said, do you know Miss Rhapsody? Called her, said I didn't know she was working, but I said, we have to interview you on Sunday, because we wanted to get out, particularly in the summertime. It was gorgeous. And go to do your interview, come back to the office, write your story, and then you can go home rather than sit around all day, or most of it. So that changed my life. In this book, I have an essay that I also write. People want to know, how did I get involved? Who would ever have thought that a young white kid who had just come to Newark would find out that this black woman who was 41 years older than she was would become the inspiration and change the direction of my life forever. So consequently, I tell you this, and I mean this, I would have known anything. I would have known nothing if it hadn't been for Miss Rhapsody. I never thought I'd see her again after the interview. One of her aides called me and said that she was with the National Council of Negro Women. They were having a dance at Ebony Manor. I happened to have a date that night for my old paper, and I was new to the Star Ledger, but we had to go up to Greenwood Lake for a party for my old boss. My date brought me down here to Ebony Manor, 1 o'clock in the morning. She had stopped singing. The band was packing up. We were invited to a party at the home of Larchmont Mansion, really, of Al Vollmer, who became eventually the founder of the Harlem Blues and Jazz Band in Larchmont, to hear her sing, and we went to that. And then I started bringing my mother and my friends to all these parties at Al's house. I was very fortunate, before I knew any jazz musicians from Newark, to meet all the people that were in the many of the people that were in the Ellington Band, the Count Basie's band, the Cabs band, Hamp's band, Al Casey, who was Fats Waller's guitarist, George James, who played with Louis Armstrong. These were all guys who were going to these parties, and the fellow had an empty house at the time. There must have been 200 musicians roaming around the grounds of this beautiful house high on a hill overlooking Long Island Sound. Not only that, I was able to get to meet Edna Mae Harris, who was the star of black cast only movies that were shown in the South.
Okay.
Her sister they were sitting on a bench when we came into Al's house, and Miss Rapp, as we called her, said, "This is Edna Mae. This is her sister Vivian Harris. She's the original voice of the Apollo."
Wow.
Okay. Here is Eva Taylor, 1928 blues shouter. She made what they call race records for Columbia Records. Her husband, Spencer Williams, the first Broadway producer of black music. He had a record company and made sheet music. I right away became enchanted. Once they started playing, there were 20 piano players and 25 trumpet players, and all they had was a piano and a drum kit. All the guys brought their horns, and Joe Newman, who played in many big bands, Buddy Tate and Earl Warren, who were in Basie's band. All these guys were there. I had no idea they were famous. I never heard of them, but I just became enchanted. And then gradually, Miss Rhapsody began inviting me to parties here at Newark at Harold Mitchell's house on 9th Street, the Newark jazz musicians. And I realized what a big story there was here, which led me to write Swing City, Newark Nightlife, 1925 to 50. And as this book is also dedicated to Miss Rhapsody.
The idea again comes back to the prolific method in which you have been able to use your journalism talents and provide us with an outstanding history of the culture. And when you say Swing City and Nightlife, each one of them had a specific type of mystical method of engaging you to understand exactly what that life was like during that period.
Yeah. Well,
this particular volume now has another dimension. You really put it together as an encyclopedia that critiques many of the artists that have frequented Newark in particular, but in general, a really tapestry of different kinds of people in our community. Like people like DeLacy Davis, for instance, as I shared with you before. I'm going through the book and I had no idea DeLacy was a jazz artist.
Yeah, DeLacy went to Arts High School. He played congas. He plays congas now, but he's been several years. He's been in a band in Atlantic City on the weekends. I think on Sunday, and people know him in a totally different capacity, as a police officer, as an educator,
but not as a musician or an artist.
How about Ken Gibson?
Really? No, I didn't notice that yet, but I'm sure.
There's 20 essays. One of them is with Ken.
Okay.
I covered Ken's inaugural on July 1st, 1970.
Okay.
And I covered the 3 parties that night. Early on, in his administration, a lot of people in those days knew that Ken played the saxophone because he would take it out and tootle it once in a while, particularly when Jazz Week and things like that. But many people, except his closest friends, did not know that he played professionally in a band, Jackie Bland's Sensational Swing Band, when he was a teenager, like late teens, with Wayne Shorter, who went on to win 10 Grammys. And took me 10 years when I found the picture
Really?
Wayne is playing clarinet, and it's one of the pictures in the book, and Ken is playing saxophone.
Wow. You know, and that's something amazing about how, again, you really discover a method that keep people engaged. I'm obviously a picture guy because
Sure.
of my background, but you really do put together a profound essay that is reasonably interesting to the extent that it's more than just a book to look at. You can
Yeah.
really take this and use it, especially if you are studying this particular area of music.
Well, my books have circulated worldwide, but my interest is Newark. It's very difficult to get much of an audience beyond when you have the name of the city in the book. It's very difficult to get a publisher
Right, yeah.
because you have a narrow focus. But that's my interest, so that doesn't bother me all that much. Although I have a lot of friends in Europe, and we're trying to get the book over there now.
Mhm.
But the whole idea of Newark as an important jazz center really goes back to Newark being a beer town. We were on the Passaic River. The water was pure, believe it or not, in those days. And we had 5 or 6 major breweries: Pabst, Schaefer, Ballantine, Anheuser-Busch, Weigenspan, Kruger. They were all here because of the purity of the water. And because of that, in the 1930s, this is hard to believe, there were 1,100 taverns.
Really?
Right. Young black men and women were coming up from the South to make a better life. It was just preceding the war years. It was a factory town from almost get-go, or from the 1880s at least. People worked in the factories all week, and then they went out, not so much to drink, but went to the corner tavern, and there were not just every corner, in between, there were loads and loads and loads of places to go and have a beer. And to sell their beer, the owners of the taverns or clubs would hire musicians. So if you had just had a corner bar, you might have a piano player. If you had a little bigger place, you had a trio. And then the clubs came into existence. There were 7 major clubs: the Nest Club, the Kinney Club, the Boston Plaza, and so on. So that's how we became a jazz town. Also, all the big bands were coming to New York because of our location. We're playing Newark on the way in and out. So Basie's band, Ellington's band, were at the Adams Theater.
Okay.
Ken and Wayne Shorter.
And when you talk about these places, again, they are
Yes.
venues that are in Newark.
And on Branford Place.
Oh, wow.
On Branford
Right
Place.
down the block here, yeah.
And Charlie Persip, who's a very world-famous drummer, said that the Adams was my university, my jazz university. And the kids Wayne would forge notes from his parents to go down there to cut school and go to the Adams had matinees, and they had shows almost all day long. Ken was a good kid. He waited until after school to go down. Some of the kids would sneak in through the balcony to watch their stars, and that's how James Moody decided to become a saxophone player from watching one of the favorite sax guys on stage at the Adams.
Wow. If you're just tuning in, we're here with none other than Barbara Kukla, who has given us an exciting new book, The Encyclopedia of Newark Jazz, A Century of Great Music. And Barbara, looking at the contents, you really weave a wonderful tapestry when it comes down to making it interesting, to the aspects of it having a historical value and an educational type of priority.
Thank you.
Looking at it, when you have the way you have venues, you have bands, even to the flyers that were given out during certain periods of time. Your unique characteristic of being able to remember and critique a number of these things is fascinating.
Thank you.
I just can't understand it, how able to put it in a book and be able to do it on your own money.
Yes.
As a self-publisher, what are the pitfalls when it comes to wanting to make sure that there is a history and a legacy that especially our young folk can be able to recognize and appreciate and still have to go through the burden?
A lot of people tell me they would like to write a book. My first question is, what is your objective? Okay. If your objective is to make money, forget it. Okay. Unless
Wow.
you sell $1 million, you're going to get probably a dollar. I got $1.65 from per book for my first book.
Really?
And then, of course, you're putting your time and your money and your effort into the whole thing to write it. It's hard for me to really go further with that for anybody else because that's not why I do it.
Right.
I do it because I love the history, I love the research, I love, because I love Miss Rhapsody and all her friends.
Okay.
I want to, and this is why I do I want to see my friends' history and Newark history be preserved. This is my 6th book. I wrote the book about black women, as you know, Defying the Odds, Triumphant Black Women. I wrote a book about Dolores Collins Benjamin Tillery, the founder of the North Jersey Philharmonic Glee Club. I mean, how many people really know that the Glee Club is the oldest African-American all-male choral group in the United States?
No,
Founded
I
at
didn't,
Douglas
yeah.
Harrison Apartments, 1939, in Dolores's apartment.
Wow.
You know, and they're still going strong. They still rehearse every Friday night, and they're more than 75 years old now.
That's interesting. Thinking about it from that perspective, do you really see a need for this kind of information?
Well, it's getting harder. I just was really shocked to find out that many libraries now are doing away with their reference departments.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Because it's online?
Well, 2 reasons: space, and because they can find just about anything they want online.
Okay.
So, I mean, getting my books into libraries is 10 times as difficult as it might have been 10 years ago.
No, really?
People are not reading. I really, Herb, despite all this work, this may be a little different because it has brief bios and people may be looking for musicians. But when I've written books where it's chapter after chapter, I think most people look at the pictures. I bet you I couldn't find 100 people who have read my book.
Oh, boy.
I really, seriously.
Wow. When you look at the idea of saying that there are brief histories about it, Curry Jackson, who's my favorite,
Yes.
singer born August 25th in Newark, advocate of American Songbook, sang in Mount Calvary Baptist Church choir as a girl and toured with WWRL Gospel Chorus, studied piano vocal music with Duke Anderson, and it goes on to a number of different areas that Carrie has been involved with, including her jazz vocal collective.
Sure.
When that kind of information, and you don't just do it for her, you have Jackie Jones here, some of the people that I'm really familiar with, and others that I'm not, spending the time to be able to get this much of a definition must require a lot of patience. In your relationship of dealing with it and structuring it the way you have,
Right.
it should have more of a priority in our libraries.
Well, hopefully. Okay. When you talk about Carrie, in addition to the books, I really became involved in other aspects of the jazz world with Carrie and Jackie Jones and Cynthia Holliday, Yvette Glover, Pat Tandy.
And I'm familiar with all
Purvis,
these. These are still frequent jazz
all of
artists.
them, yeah. I had a group called the Newark Jazz Divas.
The New York Jazz Divas.
I think Newark Songbirds.
Okay.
Newark Songbirds. And I did a calendar with them, and we did a show at the library, at the Newark Library, which was such a hit that all the women singers, there were 9 of them, they all said that they would come back to the library and do a benefit for the Friends of the Newark Public Library, which
That's
was
interesting.
another hit.
Right.
I also, for 4 years, I ran a jazz competition for students it was at Arts High School, but it was for all Newark Public School students, and we gave out 4,500 in prizes each year. This is when I could recoup my expenses, which is it's very hard for me to even break even now. Sometimes I go in a hole, so it's an expensive hobby. But in the early days, when publication costs were not that much, I did a calendar in memory of my best friend, Connie Woodruff. Connie was very well known in Newark. We made $18,000 profit. That's the most I've ever made on anything. We took that money and used it for 4 years to interest kids in jazz. So Bill May was then the head of music and art in the school system. He went into the schools and said to the kids, we're going to have a jazz competition. The kids said, "Jazz? We don't want to play jazz." He said, the winning prize for the bands is $1,000. Second prize is $500. This is every year. Third prize is $250, and everybody gets $100. Winning vocalist and the winning instrumentalist $500, $250, $150 honorable mention for everybody. The winners get jackets. The Connie Woodruff, I didn't think boys would wear the jackets. The Connie Woodruff Music Prize.
Wow.
In Connie's memory. And we had Yvette Glover and Pat, I think, was Tandy was a judge one year. Carrie Smith was a judge. So we brought the kids in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and Bill would put them on stage gradually, fed them from Jay's at Sam. We used students at Arts High School for photographers.
Boy, Newark history just going down the line. Oh my God.
Yeah, and because he wanted to interest the kids. Unfortunately, we ran out of money, and the school system at that time did not pick it up, although I was practically begging them to do it.
That's what happens on a number of different initiatives, that a lot of times you don't get the kind of visibility that you look for, because there's so much philanthropy out there that a lot of times they don't recognize what's happening.
Well, it's a shame, because music in our schools is just about gone.
Yeah.
And
do you think this can help rejuvenate it?
well, I can't do it again at this stage of my life. But I mean, if somebody out there wants to pick it up,
how about that, right?
Be my guest.
Yeah, I mean, it really
seriously.
has a credibility that can be
I can't tell you how
invested
much
in.
bang you get for the buck. One of our kids, Tyshawn Sori, was our first winner. Went on, he's a professional drummer, plays all over
Is
Europe.
that right? Okay.
Yeah, and he also won the Star Ledger. A lot of the Star Ledger scholarships were an outgrowth of my program.
Okay.
Although I'm not too sure the guy that did it would say that now, but I know it was.
Right.
And if he's listening.
Yeah.
And
No, I can believe that, because you have
but
always
Tyshawn won
had-
the first 10,000.
Okay.
And then we had another kid, Philip, won
$10,000.
5,000, I think.
That's amazing.
And several of them went on to play and get scholarships for music for William Patterson or other music colleges.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you very much, the type of collection of pictures that you have in this book are absolutely phenomenal and historic. It really shares a number of different areas where your passion is. You put a lot of heart in this, didn't you?
Thank you. Well, that's, as I said, work inside my soul. Definitely.
And thinking about, just how magnificent it is, I'm really enchanted over the fact that it is my pleasure to recommend to everyone who is watching and those who haven't been able to witness the kind of work that Ms. Kukla does, to go out and really show her your appreciation. Even if you have to worry about it. I say I don't have a problem nowadays when it comes to someone asking me for something to help encourage an investment.
Well, thank you so much. I
I'm
appreciate
be
it.
honest with you, because I just got a ticket for parking in the wrong area, and I know I'm going to get that ticket paid.
Wow.
And I didn't have the money to do that, but I'm
Yeah.
going to find that money to keep that ticket paid,
I
right?
hear you.
So I
Yes.
could find something out of somewhere to invest in an area of culture that many of our future generation will find as a treat and an experience of educational knowledge. I mean, I'm just going through this book, and this is much more than a relic. It's an heirloom, and I can believe that it's going to be something that is going to be appreciated for more years to come. We look forward to building a way in which we can help. Maybe we can work with you on a fundraiser that can be supportive
Thank you.
towards the opportunity of making sure that people understand how valuable this particular information is, and how it can be subject to finding a place in our libraries,
Yes.
because it's necessary
True.
for it to be there. We look forward in many ways to work with you. We have had some really strong opportunities to develop ways in which you have been outstanding.
I just want to say that Melvin Moore's father, Clem Moorman, is the only person living from my Swing City book, and he turned 101 in March, and he's still performing professionally.
Is that right?
Yes, once a month. However, at his last gig, the the man who owned the restaurant passed away, so now Clem is looking around for a new place.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and he's sharp as a tack. I walked into the restaurant where he was.
Clem Moorman?
Clem Moorman, from
Okay.
20 feet away, is playing the piano, and
Right.
he started singing "You're Nobody Till
Yeah,
You Know
back in
Barbara." You're nobody till you
1916
know
was
Barbara
born.
Kukla.
Wow.
And
And it's right here in the book. My friend
There's an
Rodham
essay
Schwartz.
there's
Look at
an-
there. You got an essay on Rodham. Rodham's my man.
there's an essay with Clem. There's an essay with Linda Moody, James Moody's
Yeah,
wife.
just noticed that.
There's an
Yeah.
essay with Ken Gibson.
Okay.
There's an essay with Donna Vaughan, who's Sarah Vaughan's adopted sister.
Oh, really?
I try to do things that most jazz books are the same. You read the same information about Louis Armstrong,
Right.
Duke Ellington. There's very little that's new. I
Right.
try to, because I have these personal ties, know these
Right.
people,
Right.
put things in that are what it's like for Sarah to come home to Weequahic Avenue
Yeah.
when her sister Donna was growing up and living in the house with their parents.
Okay.
How
A real
she-
story.
Yeah, how she would treat the kids to ice cream.
Okay.
Things like that.
That's really beautiful. Denise McCoy from the Priory,
How she keeps the Priory going.
and over a decade. She's
Yes.
been around a long
Well, she
time. over
does
there with
everything,
that.
including cooking the food in the kitchen or whatever it is.
Yeah.
People don't know this.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have complaints about the same food or whatever. They have no idea that Denise has stood on her head
Okay.
to keep this place. So she doesn't even really come out and say it all,
Right.
but it gives you an idea of some of the things she's had to go through to keep jazz alive at the Priory.
Well, I'm very happy that I've had an experience to be able to share with you many of the individuals that is in this book. If you don't have it, you need to go out and get it. And some of the other books that Ms. Kukla has been able to put together in terms of being able to share with us the rich culture of jazz in the Newark community. I want to thank you very much.
Oh.
Your inspiration is always unique and absorbing, and we want to appreciate you as often as we possibly can.
Well, I want to thank you, her, for keeping the culture alive and having me on your shows all the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
want to thank you for tuning in, and we want to look forward to having more opportunities to be able to share with you these wonderful experiences with the people who make Newark what Newark is. Thank you very much, and have a good night.